Hello everybody, this is Buddy Craig with another one of my annoying movies. Tonight I'm going to show you how to pull off a steering wheel, partially remove a turn signal switch, and replace the ignition lock cylinder. Things we need to do for this. These are actually pliers that are used for installing the rings on pistons, but they work pretty good on compression snap rings, so that's what I use here. We're gonna need, oh boy, I'm gonna make everyone seasick. Let me turn this way. Okay, upper left corner, a couple small flat blade screwdrivers. A pick set is really helpful. There's a snap ring that we're gonna have to try to get off that can, without scribes, they can be problematic, but you can still do it with flat blade screwdrivers. The expansion snap ring pliers, a breaker bar, 6-inch extension. You can probably get by with 3-inch extension, or even a ratchet with a long handle, but there's a big nut. It's a 13/16. You want a 13/16 socket. The 13/16 nut that's on there is on there pretty tight, so I use a breaker bar because I'm a wimp. Next thing we're going to need GM lock plate depressing tool, steering wheel puller. This is actually a harmonic balancer puller, but it's kind of big and bulky, but it's still small enough to do the job. These are long, 1/4 inch, 18 threads per inch. Those aren't 1/4 inch, those are 5/16. They're 18 threads per inch. Buy them at a hardware store. These are just grade 5, and I've used them many times over and over again. But I do like to put a little drop of oil on the threads when I'm using them. And then a wrench that will operate both the lock plate depressor and also the long bolts that screw into the hub on the steering wheel. And finally, you need a screwdriver with a number 2 Phillips. I swear there's a number 3 Phillips after you. It's either there's a number 3 Phillips in there, and I'm not sure if we're going to need that or not. But there is a Torx that we're going to need, and I think it's a T20. I know just about everything else on the Fiero is a T15, but I think there's a T20 involved in there somewhere. So I've got my little handy bit holder right by my side, so I'll be covered no matter what size I need. And I'll try to mention what sizes I'm using as we're going along. Next thing I want to show is the picture. There's I'll just wait until I'm there. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. There's a slit, a stake mark that kind of made like by a chisel, that when you reinstall the steering wheel, you want to pay attention to this stake mark in the shaft of the steering column. Then after I get this nut off, you'll be able to see another stake mark on the hub of the steering wheel. You want these two marks to be lined up when you put this back. Whoops, bumped the horn pin. You want these two marks to be lined up when you put the steering wheel back on. You're able to get it off just a hair, one tooth in either direction, I think. So just pay attention to these two stake marks when you're putting it back together, and you want them to be lined up. And I'll be right back, and we'll start the teardown process. Okay, we're getting ready to pull this steering wheel. This is an 84 SE, but they're all going to be the same. The only difference is you might have that rectangular horn plate that's got the paddles on each side, but everything else is going to be identical. You do not need the key for this. If you've lost the key, you can replace the lock cylinder without the key. So I'm just going to throw the key in the passenger seat. Alright, normally I can take this horn pad off with my hand. If you have problems, you can take a screwdriver. There's a groove, a slot right here that you can get it underneath there and pry it off with, but normally they come off that easy. Okay, I'm gonna try to use my left hand as much as possible because I know my right hand would be in the way. First we gotta take off the snap clip. This is a safety precaution clip, and in case the big nut underneath here ever gets loose, this clip will keep your steering wheel from falling completely off. So I always put that back on whenever possible. Alright. I'm going to do some of these things in an order that I normally don't do because the steering wheel, never mind. Forget that. God, edit that out. Okay, 13, I think 13/16 socket. Yep. See, that was pretty easy with a 2 foot long breakover bar, but if you try to do that with a 6-inch socket or ratchet, you're going to be grunting. Okay, nuts off. I just throw everything into the ashtray while I'm doing this. The horn pin. You depress it. You slightly have to push it down and rotate it. It's in the 12 o'clock position. You push it down and kind of rotate it to about 11, 10, about 10 o'clock. And it pulls out. There's a tab. Only one. There's one post. Oh boy, you can't see that. It's too small. There's one little post that you have to fit into a groove when you're replacing this. But the pin is slid in that plastic housing. And then there's a little spring down in that hole that it's copper, so a magnetic screwdriver is not going to help. It's going to be one of those times where a pick set comes in handy. Whoops! If you ground it out, it's going to honk at you. Pull your spring out just so you don't lose it. Now the fun part of pulling the steering wheel. This is a harmonic balancer puller, but it works just fine for doing this. It could be a lot smaller. Whoops. My rules is I put a little dab of oil on the threads. Run that down until it's finger tight. A dab of oil. Alright, the next part is the forcing screw. And I don't use this the way it was originally designed. Normally there's a point on here, or in this particular one there was a cup that fit on it that had a point on the end. I've lost that, sorry. Normally, you'd have that pulled up into place, you'd run this screw down through the center of it, and you'd keep twisting on this forcing screw until the steering wheel popped off. I'm going to move the camera, hold on. Normally you'd run this screw down until it pushed on the center shaft of the steering column, and then you'd keep turning this screw until you pop the steering column off. But the metal that the center shaft of the steering column is really soft, and I've seen a lot of them deformed and kind of the tops of them mushroom out. And I learned this trick from an really old guy. He must have been like 80 years old. And he said, "You're doing it wrong." I was like, "What are you talking about?" Anyway, so I'm going to use this old guy's trick, and I've used it ever since, and it works like a charm. Once you get these two screws tightened in by hand, loosen them both up one full turn. You want this